bring this up. Okay, my name is David Hayes. I'm empty pop bottles here, but put it out of view. There we go. This is programming in Visual Basic. Um, we're first going to look over the information in Blackboard, the syllabus, and so forth, and then we'll get into more interesting items, the PowerPoint, and actually looking at the software. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. The syllabus. Oh, I gotta expand it. Maybe. There it goes. Syllabus is right here, so I click syllabus. I'm not gonna sit there and read all of this to you. You can sit there and read it. My email address is there, phone number. We're using MindTap, Kali Digital Access. I'll show that here in a second. Expectations, you'll learn how to program in Visual Basic. Class policies, I got late work is none, makeup work is none, but if I know you're working on the material, then I'll work with you on that, so it's not a huge deal. Grades, quizzes 10%, exercises 10%, projects tests 70%. Final project is 10%. You can read Kali policies, and then they have me give you a schedule. So some places we may get ahead, some places we may get behind, but we'll get through what we need to get through. If I go to course content, here's the link for the online class meeting. So if you can sign on during that time, fantastic. If you can't, not a big deal. Don't stress about it. Here's a link for Kali Digital Access. That's also under your course tools here. If you click here, this is where you go get the access code for the class. And then here's where the ebook is. So if you click this link here, worry doesn't be an error. Close that. Then you got your chapter 1, chapter 2. Intermixed in here is activities. A place where you can find the entire book is right over here. This little blue, that's a full book. And if you click that, and then you can click this to expand it. So this is where the ebook is. You can click chapters up here to go to different chapters. Huh, interesting. Be nice if they actually put numbers on there, but anyway. Here's where the actual chapters are. You can actually read the book here too. If you expand here, you see there's chapter 1 read. You click that, and then you can read chapter 1, apply the concepts, focus on concept lesson. So you click this, it takes you to the ebook. So it takes you to the particular chapter and so forth. Except for those look like the back of the. Yeah, focus and apply. Okay, those aren't the actual ebook. Usually they do have that have that there. I guess you have to go to the blue book. Just be nice if you can see the titles here, Planning Applications, Designing Interface, Chapter 2. They just don't put Chapter 2 here. But that's where the ebook's located at. And I'll close that. There'll be a few other items that I'll cover later on that I'll sign out of MindTap, but that's all you really need to know for now. Under each week, after I get done recording the lecture, and I'll put the YouTube video out there where you can watch it whenever you want, and also put assignments. It's probably all the exciting stuff out of here. Now the software. Let me talk about that. You Google Visual Studio Express. Get over here, and you want to download the community version. This talks about the options below to see what version. Student or teacher. So it'll guide you on what to download. You should not have to pay, so don't fork out. The Visual Studio by itself can be expensive. See how here we have a free download, fully featured IDE for students, open source, and individual developers. Visual Studio Professional has more features, and so does Enterprise, but see how it says free trial, which means you have to buy it at some point. It's like I say, it's pricey. Okay. Now, from a programming standpoint, a little bit about Visual Basic. I think it was kind of the in the forefront of kind of the revolution of Windows programming. It's one of the first ones I can remember that was Windows based. There were some of them that was DOS based that kind of had the same functionality, but Visual Basic was the first one. It's a very gentle introduction to programming, so it's not horrible to learn how to program in it. And a lot of people take Visual Basic, kind of get that introduction. Some programs at four-year colleges revolve around Visual Basic. If you go into Friends, their entire program, I believe, is based on Visual Basic. At least their computer science portion is. I've talked with the professor there, went up and met with him, and now there's not a huge demand for Visual Basic programmers, but if you can program in Visual Basic, you can program in about anything. You may be sitting there, why is that program at Friends focusing on Visual Basic if there's a huge demand for it? What you'll find about programming is if you learn one programming language, you'll be able to easily pick up on another programming language, and places recognize that. So just as long as it's really one of the popular, one of the more robust, the programming languages, then you'd be fine. Now, if you're learning something real obscure, then they'll probably just look at you strange at an interview. Now, if I go to dice.com, let me tell you what I'm showing you. This is the big website for IT jobs, tech jobs. If I come down here and I type in Java, and then I search. You see there's 19,092 jobs. And if I left Java out, it's 81,000 jobs. So quite a few are looking for you to have Java. But they recognize that not everybody's going to know Java. So if you have Visual Basic background, they'll take Visual Basic. If you have some of these other ones, now preferences is that they're looking for a Java programmer. They'd like you to know Java, but in reality, that doesn't always exist. I worked 13 years as a computer programmer. Both jobs that I had, I really wasn't qualified for when I applied for the job. I wasn't lying. I didn't say I was, but they recognize that. Um, First one was they were looking for a COBOL programmer, and I definitely wouldn't consider myself a COBOL programmer at that point. Um, I had taken one class in it, just basically typed in programs out of the book and ran them. So it was a pretty useless class. Um, that was it. I had programmed in Pascal at Pittsburgh State, and they hired me. And I was just fine, did just fine on that. When I went to work for a company called IFR, they were programming in Delphi. I'd never programmed in Delphi in my life. I had programmed in Visual Basic, which was a Windows development package, which is what Delphi was. And if you can do one Windows development package, you can do another. And they recognize that. I didn't lie to them. I didn't say, yeah, I'm a skilled Delphi programmer. And, what is Delphi? I didn't lie. You don't want to lie. Um, so keep that in mind. If you're reading a job advertisement and you're sitting there thinking, boy, I've never programmed in that, don't let that stop you. What's the worst they're going to do? Tell you no? I've never had anybody laugh at me. Probably one should have, but I think it was the NCR I applied to in Wichita. And I had been using API calls in Visual Basic. And how I used them is I have a notepad. I would edit, copy it, and edit, paste it in because I couldn't remember all the syntax of it. And never really paid much attention to the details of it. And I told them I'd used, a couple of API calls because they'd asked specifically about API calls. And I said I'd used a couple. And they asked me which ones I'd used. It's like I couldn't answer them. It's like, well, I edit, copy from Notepad and paste it in, and I'm sure they had some choice words for me after I left, but they're too polite to laugh at me in front of my face. Um, I think they were looking for somebody a little bit more skilled in APIs, which wasn't me. I just used a couple. Again, you don't never want to lie, but don't let job posting steer you away. It's like, well, I don't have that and I don't have that. Apply and see what happens. We were looking for an individual at IFR, and I was part of the team to look at the resumes and so forth. And you'd be shocked at what we get in. One of the positions we applied for, I think we had one person that really wasn't quite right, but at least they programmed. We had one individual that I think his extent of programming is he programmed his VCR type of deal, but he liked computers. So I'd like to say there's a big pool of people you could pick from if you're an employer, but that isn't necessarily the case. This dice.com, if you go and this isn't anything I'm making up or anything, you can go out here and look for yourself. Let me see if I go to maybe it's advanced search. Go to advanced search. I'm gonna leave these all blank, so I'll pull up all the jobs. And oh no, I know what they do. They keep changing their website. Up here it says try the new job search. If I click that, now it went out and find all the jobs, 81,652. And the posted date, if I look in the last 3 days, of those 81,000 jobs, 59,000 of them have been posted in the last 3 days. Well, really what I'm interested in is perhaps full time. So full time in the last 3 days has had 32,174 jobs posted. So that's averaging about 10,000 full-time jobs a day are posted out here. Now, the numbers can be confusing because you have, this doesn't mean there's that many new jobs each day, but what you'll find is that people leave, and so they'll post their jobs out there. So that's not a new job, but that's a new job posting. You'll find that perhaps they repost a job. They have it out there, and then they'll repost it, maybe to get higher up in the list, or to be showing its last 3 days. So it's not as great as it sounds in terms of like, oh, 10,000 brand new jobs each day. But there's still just a huge amount of demand in IT jobs. And this is just ones on Dice.com. I would guess that there's at least 2 or 3 times as much in other areas. Uh, Mainly on people's websites. Like I don't think you'll find any Geek Squad jobs out here. Maybe I'm wrong. Let's type Geek Squad. See if I can spell. No Geek Squad, because Best Buy knows that they just advertise on their own website. They get a lot of people walking in because it's a common place for people that have some hardware repair to go. They don't need to advertise on Dice.com. A lot of places advertise on their own personal websites. I'm probably really underestimating how many there is now that I'm saying this. Of course, I still got the last 3 days. Let me get rid of the last 3 days. And search, I guess. 10 jobs. I guarantee that there's more than 10 IT jobs available across the entire United States at colleges. So they're not advertising out here. So maybe it's 5 times, maybe it's really 5 times as much as this now that I'm talking this through, which means you're probably getting 50,000 jobs postings per day. It's hard to say. I don't think you can find anybody that knows the exact number, but there's big demand. Let's see. Let me type Java again. Get rid of the full-time jobs. 15,000 jobs. Let me type Visual Basic. 205 jobs. Now this may discourage you, and you think, well, I'm not going to study Visual Basic. There's no jobs out there for it. Again, it's a very good language to learn Windows programming, and if there really was no jobs out there for it, then Friends University would not be able to place anybody. They got some of the highest placement rates for their graduates at Friends University. It's a little bit pricey. It's a private college, but I've talked with the guy there, and they got a fantastic program. I wouldn't go there probably because I couldn't afford it. But if you had the money, they would give you the skill sets you need to be successful in the IT field and make sure you get placed. And his big thing is he's made these connections with all these companies in Wichita. And so he has graduates that he's trained them the proper way to program and the design of the screens and everything. And the companies know that, and so they trust the graduates that he sends to them. So it's a good partnership between the two. Now, if I type in .NET, you see you got 5,532. Well, .NET is part of what Visual Basic encompasses. So sometimes it may be hidden under different names. What if it's under VB? See, it's VB.NET. That's Visual Basic. You have to be careful. You can't take this necessarily at face value. You just have to kind of dig into it a little bit, think about what they might put in. Not everything's as big as Java, in case you're wondering. Ruby, you may have heard of Ruby. 994 jobs. That's people claim up and down that Ruby's kind of one of the waves of the future. Well, there's no jobs out there. Golang, if I'm saying that right, 164, less than Visual Basic. This is the big one that Amazon uses. So I suppose if you wanted to work at Amazon, then you would become an expert at this. I played that a little bit. It's just a strange language. Okay, enough about that. Showed you where the software was. I'm going to bring it up in mine. We're going to be using Visual Studio 2019. It looks like both on this PC, but I'm going to do 2019 because that's what will match what you have at home. Doesn't match the book exactly, but we'll get by this just fine. Excuse me. And you see there's a create a new project here. And this comes up here. See different ones you can choose and so forth. I'm going to choose an empty project. You can also break it down by language here. You see how there's Visual Basic. I guess I won't open up empty. Once I change that to Visual Basic, and this is new with 2019, by the way. So if you look in the book, theirs is a little bit different. See, there's a console app. All kinds of different. You may not have all these options on yours. Here's Windows Form app. That's one I was looking for. This is the big one we'll use. And I'll click Visual Basic. Okay, so I got that selected. Actually, I just selected the entire thing. And click Next. Give it some kind of meaningful name if you want. This should match your project names. So don't name them all Windows App 1, Windows App 2, Windows App 3, Windows App 4. And click Create. Grab a drink here. Okay. Now I'm going to go over another update. I'm going to go look at the PowerPoint. I'm not going to sit there and read the PowerPoint to you. I'm going to skip over. You can obviously read the chapter. So this is chapter 1, Introduction to Visual Studio 2017, Visual Basic. Talks about concepts covered in this lesson. The IDE, that stands for Interactive Development Environment. That's a term you should know. There's lots of terms that Microsoft has in their material and tests and so forth. Some of them are important, some are not, but that is one. The IDE is an environment that contains all the tools and features you need to create, run, and test your programs. Let me sign back in. Wish it wouldn't disconnect if nobody was on, but it does. Share screen again. Don't know why. I mean, just because nobody's signed on, I'm sitting here. It's an environment that contains all the tools and features you need to create, run, and test your programs. So it provides a user-friendly way to work with everything. You can think of it that way. A good IDE is critical to being successful in programming. You have people that have different preferences on which IDE they want to use. A GUI, graphical user interface, that's important. Is what your person using your program sees and interacts with while your program is running. Then you got application. Talks about running a good morning. I'm not going to do that. Talks about that. You can read all that. Object-oriented programming, OOP. I'm going to refer to that as the semester goes on. We'll program some of that. And I'm not going to worry about that. Not going to worry about that. Got our designer window, got a form, toolbox window, so forth. Okay. Here's our Windows program we're going to write, work with. And I can expand it if I put my mouse in the lower right-hand corner. It becomes a double arrow. I think that's what it looks like. It's bouncing around, so I can't hardly see it. I can click and hold out my left mouse button and drag and make it bigger. An ID is what allows you to do that. Designer window, that's where we're at, where we're creating our window applications GUI, a form. This, if I can get it to go back, this is a form. We'll see more about that. You got toolbox window to add other objects called controls to the form. Down here, these tabs down here, you see one that says toolbox. And it says initializing, and it'll bring up all of our available components that we can add on. Now, if you scroll to the top of this, you see the common controls up here. Some of these you never use down to bottom, very seldom. There's some very popular ones, and that's why they got them split up this way. It's either under View or under Window. Let me go into View first. See, here's Toolbox right here. All of these are this way, by the way. You know, all Windows development packages of this flavor. If you're looking for, you can't find the toolbox, it's closed for some reason, then if you come up here and do a View, or the other place where they're always at is Windows. Here they're not under the Windows in this package, but under View, then you can bring it up. Now there's a lot of windows. You don't want to bring them all up. It'll be so confusing you won't be able to function. You see this bookmark window. You can bring up the bookmark window. I'm going to close it because I don't want it. You'd like to have as little on the screen as possible so you can have room to work. So that's your goal. And let me close this down. I don't want to close that right now. Okay, how do we put a component on there? You know, they're having you run pre-existing ones. Well, we're just going to dive right in and create our own. For like a button, I can click this with my left mouse button and hold down and drag it over here. Once that's over there, then I can put my mouse in one of those white squares, click and hold down, and I can resize it. You see there's a text box here. I can come over here, and I'm not dragging and dropping like the first time. I'm coming over here with my mouse. I'm clicking with my left mouse button, holding down and dragging, and it'll draw that. Now you can move these after you get them on here. Like if I put my mouse over that, I can move that over like that. There's a label. I can come over here and click and draw it. This allows you to label what we want to put in here. And we're going to see how to do that in a little bit. Label, draw another one. Now you can, just like before, double click these. And it'll add it on there. Now as you reposition this, you see these little guidelines up here. That helps you line these up. Now when I resize this, I put my mouse over this far right side, click and hold down, move over. When I reach that way, you see a line appears down there. Okay. Now, some of these pretty obvious what they do. Some of them are like picture boxes. You want to put a little picture on your screen. List box. If you list items. Combo box is not so obvious, but that's a drop down list box. Check box. If I click on there, you can put check box. Something you check. So it very allows you to very easily design a Windows program. Now I could run this. So if I click Start, you notice down in the output window down there, it'll give you information. So if you got an error, it puts it down there. And here's our first Windows program. So if you followed along with this on your own, then you just wrote your first Windows. Doesn't do anything. It looks pretty bad. I wouldn't show it to anybody. But that's your first Windows package or program. How easy or how hard was that? It was easy, wasn't it? Okay. So that's what we're talking about on this PowerPoint when they talk about toolbox window. Properties. Label one. Well, how useful is that? That's not useful. If you click it one time, and you won't be sure you just click them one time. If you double click them, it's going to take you into some weird screen looks like this, which we'll eventually get to. Don't worry about that. You see the tabs across here, form1.vb. If you do double click it by mistake, you don't have to try to delete anything, but just come up here and click this other tab to go back to the screen. Okay, so you just want to click it one time. Now we want to go to properties window. And oftentimes the properties window is over here on the right-hand side. I don't see it over here. But if you go up to your view, remember view is where you find your windows. Somewhere in here, you'll find your properties. I don't know where it'd be at. Other windows, property manager. I never go and look here. What I always do, if my property window is not showing, if I right click on this label, then you see there's a properties option. And usually that brings it up. That's interesting. Maybe because I have to redo this. Huh. Wonder why that was squashed over to begin with. But this is our properties. Again, if I close this, if I click that, if you right click on this, properties, it'll appear. Now, I like the properties always to be on my screen. I like the toolbox to always be on my screen. Some people don't like them taking up the real estate of your screen. You see up here at top, there's something that looks like a push pin. This is auto hide. And whether you have this clicked or not, if I click that, it'll auto hide it. And then if I put my mouse over that and click properties, then you'll see it appear, and I take my mouse off of it and click over here, it'll hide. Again, I'll click properties, put my mouse over it, click it, and then I'll click the push pin because I want it to always stay there. Okay. Now, you see part of it I still can't see, so put my mouse over here, click and hold down, and drag over that way. Okay, so whatever you have selected is what appears over here properties-wise. So if I click label 1, I want it to say something else. Maybe I want it to say num1. Well, this is the hard part, remembering which one to choose. Luckily, we do not program all of these. I don't know what most of these are. I've never used them. If I have used some of these obscure ones, just once in a blue moon, mostly what you'll probably use is 2 or 3 of these. you'll see up here is name. That's what it's called. And we're going to come back to that. We'll circle around back to that. But there's one down here called text. It says label 1. If I come down here and change this text, just read number 1, then you see it changes what it displays on screen. If I click label 2, come here and change that to number 2, it'll change what it says on the screen. Button, if I come here, change it, I'm going to have it say add. Let's say I'm going to add 2 numbers together. And checkbox, you see that it has a text too. So there's some common properties they all have. I don't even know what to have this say. Don't know what to say. Lots of different items you can change on this. Now, if I click the form one time, I can change the text in a form. Change it to say my calculator. My form is chose. There's even some colors here. I think back color. I don't normally change colors, but let me choose that. There's a drop down next to it. No, that's not too exciting under system. Let me go to custom. Choose red. Nice and pretty. Do the drop down here. Go back to my custom. So you can change that color. Boy, that just hurts your eyes to even look at. Okay, I'll leave it that way. Mint cream. Typically, Windows packages, you do not want to become creative like this, putting a bunch of weird colors. That's why I hardly ever use that option. Windows has a certain standard when you got a Windows package. Used to be, and there's still something similar to this, but it's changed. It used to be to be considered a Windows software certified by Microsoft. You had to have certain items met. You couldn't use weird colors. I don't think that was one of the possibilities. If you go up to the file, there'll always be a new, open, close. So they've outlined that. To do an open, there's a certain keystroke for it. Do a close, certain keystroke, so forth. So the reason why Microsoft isn't like a dictator saying, hey, you're going to follow our guide or we're not going to certify you. That's not the reasoning. The reasoning is they want to make it so that if you know one Windows package, you can very easily pick up another Windows package because it's still got the file, it's got help, it's got all the same look and feel as other Windows packages. Okay, now you kind of see what properties is. The Solution Explorer. Over here, this tab, the first one that came up was the Solution Explorer. This is where all your files are. You see how I got form.vb, form1 here, and I expand that. And it actually says label 1, label 2, text box. These actually correspond to what I've added on here. And click the wrong X. Oops, I just closed it. Just close that. No, I don't want to close that. Okay, cancel. Okay, so I closed my my nice windows there. If I come over here, form1.vb, if you double click it, it brings it back. I guess if you close everything, it wants to close it there. So if you close it by accident, then you can come over here and bring it back up. So there's a reason to go to the Solution Explorer. Like I say, I'm not going to sit here and read all that to you. You can talk about it in the book. We talked about the code a little bit. all we need to know. Name property. If I'm going to add two numbers together with my program, these have to have meaningful names. And if I click it one time over my properties here, if I scroll up, this one's called text box one. That's not very meaningful. I'm going to call TB underscore num1. If I click this one, I'm going to change its name to TB underscore num2. This will make your programming easier. When you give it a valid name, you can easily refer to it. You see up here where it says TB num2, if you do the drop down, this is all the items that you've dropped on your form. You can choose it from over here too. Sometimes this is easier. Sometimes it's hidden and you don't know where it's located at. So you can come here and choose it. You don't have to give everything a name, just what you're going to refer to in code. They give you naming rules. Button, exit, text, first name. These are just conventions used in the book. You can choose whatever convention you want. Usually when we go to work for a place, they'll tell you what it should be called. Okay. Talks about applying the concepts. We started. I say you can read this in the book and so forth. Talks about how to configure it. And if you have trouble locating any of this because there are different versions of the software, then just let me know. Create a Windows form, we just did that. See here, they got their arrangement a little bit differently. They got their Solution Explorer over on the right-hand side. So it's completely customizable, whatever you want, however you want to do it. We talked about auto hide, vertical push pin. This is kind of useful. The properties. Up here at top is alphabetical, and then the one right next to it. Right next to this one is categorized. This breaks down into categories. So this is all the properties dealing with Windows style. I don't like the categories. Some people do because it groups all the appearance together. If you're not quite sure what your property is going to be, then that might be a useful one. If you're comfortable with what you need to do, then you choose this so you can alphabetically find it real fast. Okay. Talks about changing the form file name. All files with .vb file name extension refer to as source file because they contain Visual Basic Code. Okay, this talks about how to change the file name. Actually, I don't think I've ever done that. Okay, so we got our form 1.vb. Where is it at? Property. Oh, you have to choose main form.vb. So I'll choose this over here. There's my file name, sure enough. And then I can change that to calc.vb. Press enter. You'd like to perform a rename in this all references. Click yes, because it'll go through and change all references. And now that's called calc.vb. Doesn't make it run any better, just makes it a little bit readable. Now, if I start and run this, see it's now changed to what we changed. The number 1, number 2, though those aren't lined up on the left-hand side, looks like. Change the properties, we already talked about that. This talks about what some of them are for you. There's a font, you can change a font, type of box, forms name, saving a solution, just save it. Close and open a solution. Of course, saving it, you put these two diskettes right here. Now, it might be useful, if you don't know where you saved it at, to do a file, save as. Normally, you never want to do a save as. So if you got one application that you like and you want to use as a pattern for the second one, don't do a save as. Save as just saves one file. It doesn't save your entire project. I don't know why they don't have a file save project as, so it saves everything, but it doesn't. But if I do a save as here, then you should see the, up here, you should see where it's stored at. What's mine stored at? C, users, David Hayes, source, repository. I'm going to right click on this and go to pictures. Let's see if I can locate it. If I go to documents, Visual Studio 2019. Collect documents. Don't see it. So not so obvious where it's at. So then I'll use this, C: users. So go to C:, go to users. Then I'm going to go to David Hayes, source, repository. So David Hayes, double click on David Hayes. Source, double click on source. Repository, double click that. What in the world did I call this? Called it Windows App 1. And here's Windows App 1. So if I wanted to open it, then I could browse to it that way. Or I'll cancel out of that. When you do a file open, it'll go there automatically. Now, while I'm here, this is how you turn in this project. Let's say I want to turn this one in. I have to do a close solution, file close solution. It'll give you an error if you have it open when you try to zip it up. I got Windows App 1 here. I'm going to right click on it on this main level and do a send to compressed zip folder. And I'll go with the default name, so I'll press enter. And this zip file is what you'd upload to Blackboard. So that's how you turn it in a project. Now to open, you got a recent, and that's what I already got there. But if you don't, then if you come up here, close that. If you do a file open, project or solution, it goes directly out to your repository. So that's where it's saved as default. And double click Windows App 1, and you'll see one. You may not see the .sln on there, but you'll see one that refers to it as being a Visual Studio solution. That's the one you want to double click. It'll bring everything up. Looked at closing and open the solution. We have added a control to a form, even changed some properties. Snap line we talked about. That's where you're lining it up. It puts that line on there. It kind of snaps your particular component onto that line so that it's lined up. Like I said, number one and number two aren't lined up. So if I click number two, and again, I don't double click it, but I click it one time and I click with my left mouse button and hold down and drag it. Then as I move it around, then now this is now lined up with the number one and it's top aligned with the text block on the right hand side. We talked about a button. Here's how to lock the controls. Right click the form, then click lock controls. Small lock appears in the upper left hand corner of the form. Then it says save the solution, try dragging one of the controls to a different location on the form, and you'll see it's locked. I don't think I ever do that, but start and end an application. This talks about how to look at your startup, so forth. We're going to see more of that, so I won't focus on it now. Okay, entering code. If I double click on the button, then this will program a button click. See a button one click here, and then it's a subroutine. And I can put code in here. I can declare variables, all kinds of different things I can do with it. Excuse me. Keyword is abbreviation of term sub procedure. Me.close tells the computer to close the current form. Me.close. Okay. Get down here to assignment statements and comments. We're going to talk more about this. This is code you can put in. It talks about assignment operator. You can make something visible or invisible. They're not really teaching you from like beginning to end type code here. They're just throwing random stuff out here just so you see examples. And that's it for chapter 1. Okay. Let's see chapter 2. Planning applications, designing interfaces. Not going to go through and read that all to you, but you have to decide what your application is going to look like. Do you put buttons on there? Say calculate tip, exit. I don't think anybody hardly ever writes this on a piece of paper. Typically, you just design it on the fly and show it to the user, and they say, "Yeah, that's exactly what I had in mind," or they say, "No, that's not even close." Talks about guidelines for identifying labels and buttons. Guidelines for colors. People with color blindness. or color confusion. I have trouble in distinguishing colors. I laugh because I wrote a program in Delphi, which is very similar to Windows. Oh, you can almost accuse them of stealing it. And had it down, worked perfect, and so forth. And I was so happy. I gave it to customer service, and got a call from the manager. Said one of our people can't use your program at all. It's unusable to her. I forget what words she said exactly, but it's like, what? And it's working perfect. What are you talking about? I went over there, and she had issues with color. And so she could not see your standard colors that come with Windows. So I had to redesign it such that there was this horrendous color pattern. I allowed them to choose which one they wanted, but it was like black background, yellow text or something like that. So that's what with her issues with her eyes, she needed that. So you have to think about that when you're designing a program. Um, Tab order is how it's arranged. Talks about planning chart. Again, I'm not going to sit here and read all this to you. Label control to the form. Tab order. This is all about design. And that's the end of that. Okay, now let's take a look at a little bit of code. I'm not going to sit there and just read a PowerPoint to you. That'd just be as dull as could be. Okay, I'm sitting here at button 1, and I want to retrieve, or I want to write some code and perhaps retrieve some values or something like that. Now, if I do a dim num1 as, and then I can tell it as a string. Dim num2 as string. Well, dim means to define. You're defining a variable, allocating space for it. The Visual Basic is going off. Visual Basic is going off and it's setting aside memory for that. It's saying, okay, it's this memory location is where we're going to put num1. At this memory location is where we're going to put num2. And here we're telling it what type. String is can be a letters. It can be a number, numbers, or special characters, or any combination of those. Now, to bring in num1 is equal to tb underscore num1. That is what I called my text box. So I gave it the name tb num1. If I go over here to the design, click the design tab, and if I click the number 1, why did that shrink that back down? If you notice at the top, the name I give it was tb underscore num1. If you develop some kind of pattern to your naming, text boxes always start with tb underscore. Then over here, when you start typing tb underscore, it'll bring up everything that's a text box. So the naming convention helps make your program easier. Now, once you have your one you want to choose there, you just press your tab and it does the code completion for you. Dot text, and then I do a tab. And I don't know why I put that there, but it's confusing with other program languages. So num1 is equal to tb underscore num1 dot text. Well, what in the world is this doing? Well, this refers to the text box that I have over my form, and then it refers to text. Well, if I have this selected, you see there's a property that says text. What this is whatever the person that runs your program will input in. So I'll go back to my code here. Now, after I get that, then I want to print it to the screen. Message box num1. Okay, I want to talk more about that, but let's go ahead and run it and see the effects of that. Okay, so if I put something in number 1, like I put 3 in here, if I click the button add, it prints the value 3. Since I didn't specify, that couldn't be like a David. I put David in there, click add, and it puts David. So whatever you put into this text box right here is what gets out, not allocated, accessed over here. Um, there's a double, which has lots of different options. I was drawing a blank. I'm thinking C#, but I'm not thinking this. Problem with what I've done here is number is not really a string. Number is a potentially could be a double. So num1 might be 0.33. Oops, 33. Or it might be 5, but it's a number. Now, double, so if I do dim n1 as double, double is a number with decimals. And dim n2 as double. So bring in num1. They'll say n1 is equal to double dot try, it's either parse or try parse. I think try. Do a beginning parentheses, num1, close parentheses. Obviously doesn't like something there. As string by reference result as double. Okay, let me do a parse. Num1. Then I'm going to bring in num2. Num2 is equal to tb underscore num2.text. N2 is going to equal to double dot parse num2. Now I really want to add these together. So we're going to see more efficient ways in case you're wondering if doing some of this. N3 as double. To get this pop-up window to go away, you press your escape and it closes it. You'll eventually learn to love it. So don't ask how to shut it off. N3 is equal to N1 plus N2. And then we're going to do a message box to print out N3. So now if I run this, let's try it again. If I put 3 in here and I put 4 in here and then click add, comes back, tells me 7. Added them together for me. So I've just created a little calculator to add numbers. I can put decimals in here. 3.17, 4.832. Click add, gives me 8.002. That's curious. Did it come with 2 text boxes? Sure enough, it did, didn't it? Do I got 2 text message boxes here? That's a mystery. Oh, I do. Never mind. code is running. Okay. Close the code. Get rid of that. Okay. If you have a beginning sub, you have to have a closing sub. That's why you see this in sub down here. These dim statements allocate space for our variables. So you've got 5 variables, and Visual Basic has allocated space for it in the memory. This goes out and gets the value that they put into the first text box, assigns it to num1, which is a string. I can't add strings. I can concatenate them, but I can't add them. This down here, this double dot parse, what this does is it goes out and converts a string to a double. So it recognizes that it's not the right data type and want to convert it. And then I assign it. This is the assignment operator to n1. Then I go out and get text box number 2, assign it to num2. It's a string at that point. Then I do a double dot parse, which converts it from a string to a number, specifically n2, and assigns it to n2. Now this is not like algebra. This is not saying n3 is equal to n1 plus n2, and then I can move things over across equals. This is not algebra. This is the assignment operator. What that does is on the right-hand side, it goes and gets the value of n1 out of memory, goes and gets the value of n2 out of memory, adds them together, and then assigns it to the memory location n3. And then the message box just prints out the value of that. We're not going to really get, I won't assign code, but I wanted to show you what in the world does it look like. We're not going to look at code this first week. I'm going to pick out two programming projects out of MindTap, and I'll put them out there for you to do. And they'll mainly just be designing a form. So it'll look like this. As you get to programming, don't get frustrated. Programming can be a challenge. But I would encourage you to work as much many of these projects as you can, even the ungraded ones. If I come back to here and I go to the MindTap, click this little item there. I think you should be able to see this, but I think it's in the exercises. The quiz I'm going to actually assign. See how it says August 25th and so forth. But the exercise, if I click this, and I know better than assign this. I did that last fall. It was a nightmare. Reason why is if you start this assignment, they got a total of 10 different ones, and a lot of these are changing. So creating the Windows application and changing it. Create a Windows Forms application, change it. So there's tons of that in here. If you want to get good at programming, do each one of these. But this was, whenever I assigned this exercise, I didn't think much about it at first. What I was really assigning is I was assigning 10 projects, which is a lot of programming projects for 1 week. So I'm going to go through here and I'll pick out 2 of these, and I'll copy the instructions and put it over in Blackboard type of deal. We're not going to create 10 programming projects. And if I don't find ones that I may just create my own in that regard. We're going to go ahead and stop there. So always the time at the end is for questions. So we got another 38 minutes. So if you have any questions or anything, I'll answer that. We've covered chapter 1, chapter 2, and I've shown you the basics of how to change properties and work with the software.